Case 1. Neil Doherty. A retired Catholic priest sat in a Broward County courtroom in the year 2013 and pleaded no contest to 6 felony counts. That plea followed decades of allegations connected to parishes across South Florida. This is the case of Neil Doherty. Doherty served as a priest within the Archdiocese of Miami. His assignments included St. Vincent Catholic Church in Margate, along with parishes in Fort Lauderdale and Miami. He was removed from ministry in April of 2002 at the height of the national clergy abuse reporting wave that swept across dioceses in the United States. The criminal case centered on one victim, a boy who at the time lived across the street from St. Vincent's. According to court records, the abuse occurred during the 1990s, when the victim was approximately 16 years old. Separate allegations, raised by other accusers, dated back as far as 1972. The case came to renewed public attention because of civil litigation. Attorneys Jeff Herman and Jeff Anderson, both known for representing survivors in clergy abuse cases nationwide, filed a wave of lawsuits against the Archdiocese of Miami. That publicity is what led the primary criminal victim to come forward to law enforcement. Doherty was originally charged with 2 counts of sexual battery on a child, each of which carried a potential life sentence, along with 4 counts of lewd and lascivious acts and 2 counts of lewd and lascivious molestation. Under a negotiated plea agreement, the sexual battery charges were reduced, and the molestation charges were dropped entirely. Doherty pleaded no contest to 6 counts of lewd and lascivious acts upon a child. Broward Circuit Judge Kenneth Gillespie handed down the maximum sentence allowed under that plea, 15 years in state prison. Doherty received credit for 842 days already served while the case moved through pretrial proceedings. Civil attorneys, separate from the criminal case, stated that at least 27 individuals had come forward with allegations against Doherty spanning Broward and Miami-Dade counties, with claims reaching back to 1972. Those allegations were never criminally charged, largely due to Florida's statute of limitations for older offenses, meaning the 6 counts Doherty pleaded to represent only the portion of alleged conduct that fell within a prosecutable window. Doherty served approximately 10 years of his sentence. Florida Department of Corrections records show he was released in 2023 and is registered as a sex offender, residing in the Orlando area. Separately, in a civil trial connected to the broader allegations, a Miami-Dade jury awarded plaintiff Andre Susana $10 million in compensatory damages and $90 million in punitive damages, a $100 million total verdict, in November of 2011. That civil judgment was unrelated to the criminal sentence, but reflected the scale of accusations tied to Doherty's decades in ministry. In 2025, a new civil suit, filed under the designation John Doe 8, was brought forward, challenging Florida's statute of limitations as it applies to decades-old clergy abuse claims. That litigation remains part of the ongoing civil record connected to the Archdiocese of Miami. The Doherty case illustrates a recurring pattern in Florida clergy prosecutions. A single criminal case, built on the testimony of one victim within a prosecutable time frame, often represents just a fraction of the total allegations raised against a defendant over a multi-decade career in ministry. Statutes of limitations, evidentiary standards, and prosecutorial discretion all shape which allegations become charges and which remain confined to civil court. Sources for this case include reporting from the Miami Herald, CBS Miami, NBC Miami, the Sun Sentinel, and documentation maintained by bishopaccountability.org, along with public statements issued by the Archdiocese of Miami. Case 2. Robert Schäufele. A Catholic priest, ordained in 1975, was arrested in the state of Michigan in the summer of 2002 on a warrant issued out of Pinellas County, Florida. This is the case of Robert Schäufele. Schäufele served the Diocese of St. Petersburg with assignments including Sacred Heart Catholic Church in Pinellas Park and other parishes throughout the Tampa Bay region, including St. Michael the Archangel in Pasco County. The charges centered on conduct alleged to have occurred between 1983 and 1985, involving 2 boys who were approximately 11 years old at the time. Schäufele resigned from ministry in April of 2002 after a complaint was made. He was arrested roughly 2 months later. The case emerged as part of the same national reporting surge that produced the Doherty case in South Florida. Two men came forward independently, stating they had been abused as 11-year-olds while attending Sacred Heart Catholic Church. Schäufele pleaded guilty in June of 2003 to attempted capital sexual battery. He received two concurrent sentences of 30 years each, one from Pinellas County and one from Pasco County, reflecting the separate jurisdictions in which the conduct was alleged. Because portions of his conduct occurred prior to 1995, Schäufele was eligible under Florida law for a form of credit known as gain time, which allowed early release. He was released in 2015, having served approximately 12 years, close to 40% of his sentence. Separately from the criminal case, the Diocese of St. Petersburg reached a civil settlement in April of 2004, paying more than $1,100,000 to resolve claims brought by 12 men. Those men stated they were abused as boys between the ages of 9 and 14, beginning in the mid-1970s, indicating that the diocese's own settlement covered a broader pattern of alleged conduct than what was contained in the criminal charges. The Schäufele case is frequently cited in discussions of Florida's gain time statutes as they applied to pre-1995 offenses, since it illustrates how sentencing length and actual time served can differ substantially under laws that have since been reformed. Sources for this case include reporting from the Tampa Bay Times, Fox News, and documentation maintained by bishopaccountability.org, along with public diocesan records related to the Diocese of St. Petersburg. Case 3. Russell Dion Lewis. A 28-year-old assistant youth minister was arrested by Coral Springs police in November of 2009 after church leadership discovered what they described as gross misconduct. This is the case of Russell Dion Lewis. Lewis worked at Church by the Glades in Coral Springs, a Southern Baptist congregation, with a membership in the range of 6,000 to 7,000 people, one of the larger congregations in Broward County. According to the case record, Lewis engaged in a relationship with a girl he had first met when she was 12 years old. The relationship, as documented in charging paperwork, escalated between May and November of 2009, when the victim was 14. The conduct took place, in part, on church property. Church leadership dismissed Lewis and cooperated with the Coral Springs Police Department once the matter came to their attention. Lewis was arrested on November 21, 2009. He was originally charged with 1 count of custodial sexual battery and 10 counts of lewd and lascivious molestation. Under a plea arrangement entered in June of 2011, Lewis pleaded no contest to 3 counts of sexual battery by a person in a position of custodial authority and 1 count of lewd and lascivious molestation involving a victim under the age of 15. Broward Circuit Judge Sandra Perlman sentenced Lewis in October of 2011. Reporting across different outlets places the sentence at either 28 or 29 years, with the most consistent figure cited as approximately 29 years in state prison. Lewis was later named in a broader 2022 investigative report commissioned by the Southern Baptist Convention, which examined how the denomination and individual churches had handled allegations of sexual abuse by clergy and staff members over several decades. His case became one of the cited examples within that report of abuse occurring within a Southern Baptist congregation and resulting in a criminal conviction. The Lewis case reflects a category of clergy prosecution distinct from the Catholic cases already discussed. Rather than allegations surfacing decades after the fact, this case moved from initial complaint to arrest within the same year the relationship was discovered, aided by direct cooperation between church leadership and local police. Sources for this case include reporting from CBS Miami, NBC6 South Florida, Baptist News Global, and the Cult Education Institute's archived case documentation. Case 4. Jeffrey Brian Mobley. A 24-year-old youth pastor pleaded guilty in federal court in March of 2016 to 6 felony counts tied to a church-affiliated youth program in Martin County. This is the case of Jeffrey Brian Mobley. Mobley served as a youth pastor, connected to a religious-based youth program in Stuart, Florida, identified in reporting as the Grace Place. A report of suspicious conduct was made to the Martin County Sheriff's Office in September of 2015, which opened the investigation that would ultimately involve federal authorities. The Federal Bureau of Investigation's Miami field office became involved under the Department of Justice's Project Safe Childhood initiative, a nationwide program focused on crimes against children involving digital evidence. The case was prosecuted in the Southern District of Florida. Mobley pleaded guilty on March 10, 2016, to 4 counts of production and 2 counts of distribution of visual depictions of the sexual exploitation of minors, charges brought under federal statute. 2 female minors, both participants in the church's youth program, were identified as victims in the case. United States District Judge Jose E. Martinez sentenced Mobley on May 9, 2016, to 45 years in federal prison, to be served in Fort Pierce. The case was formally announced by then United States Attorney Wilfredo Ferrer and FBI Miami Special Agent in Charge, George L. Pirro. Because Mobley was sentenced under the federal system, no parole is available. Any release would occur only through completion of the sentence or applicable good conduct credit under federal guidelines. This case is notable for the speed of its resolution, from an initial report in September of 2015 to a guilty plea within 6 months and sentencing within roughly 8 months of the plea, a timeline made possible in part by digital evidence gathered during the investigation, which limited the need for a prolonged trial process. The Mobley case is also one of the clearer examples in this compilation of federal, rather than state, prosecution of clergy-connected crime in Florida, reflecting how offenses involving the production or distribution of exploitative material frequently fall under federal jurisdiction due to the interstate nature of digital transmission. Sources for this case include press releases issued by the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida in 2016, along with reporting from WPTV. Case 5. Sylvester Ofori. An Orlando pastor was convicted by a jury in July of 2024 of first-degree murder with a firearm 4 years after a shooting outside a credit union branch in Orange County. This is the case of Sylvester Ofori. Ofori, born in Accra, Ghana, led a congregation known as Floodgates of Heaven International Ministries in Orlando, where he was known within the church community as a pastor and self-styled prophet. On September 8, 2020, Ofori's estranged wife, Barbara Tommy, age 27, died from a gunshot wound outside the Navy Federal Credit Union branch on Gardens Park Boulevard, where she was employed. The incident was captured on surveillance video from the credit union's security system. According to court testimony, family members had previously reported instances of domestic violence and stated that a threat had been made against Tommy's life approximately 2 days before the shooting. The case proceeded to a 3-day jury trial in Orange County. Nearly a dozen witnesses testified, including credit union employees, customers who were present at the scene, and the victim's brother. During trial, the defense did not dispute that Ofori was responsible for the shooting. Instead, the defense contested whether the act met the legal standard of premeditation required for a first-degree murder conviction. The jury found Ofori guilty of first-degree murder with a firearm. The presiding judge sentenced him to life in prison, a sentence that under Florida law for first-degree murder carries no possibility of parole. The Orange Osceola State Attorney's Office, under State Attorney Andrew Bain, announced the conviction and sentencing on July 25, 2024. This case differs from the others in this compilation in that it does not involve allegations of sexual abuse or church-related financial crime, but instead a domestic violence homicide involving a member of clergy as the defendant. It is included here because Ofori's position as a pastor and church leader was consistently referenced throughout court proceedings and public reporting, and because the case demonstrates that clergy-connected criminal cases in Florida span a wide range of offense categories beyond abuse and fraud. Surveillance footage and witness testimony were the central pieces of evidence relied upon by prosecutors, illustrating how video evidence from private businesses has become a standard component of homicide investigations and subsequent criminal trials in Florida. Sources for this case include reporting from Click Orlando, WFTV, Fox 35 Orlando, WESH, and public statements from the Orange Osceola State Attorney's Office, 9th Judicial Circuit. Case 6. Jean-Claude Philippe. A Catholic priest was convicted by an all-female jury in Miami-Dade County in October of 2021, following a report that had first been made to another member of clergy rather than directly to police. This is the case of Jean-Claude Philippe. Philippe, a Vincentian priest belonging to the Congregation of the Mission, served at Sacred Heart Catholic Church in Homestead, within the Archdiocese of Miami. He was 67 years old at the time of sentencing. According to court records, the underlying incident occurred in October of 2018, involving an adult female parishioner, identified in civil filings only by the initials H.A., who was 44 years old at the time. The complaint stated that the victim had been given a beverage before the assault occurred inside the church rectory. The Archdiocese of Miami received a formal complaint on March 4, 2019. According to testimony, the victim had first reported the incident to a second priest, identified as Father Silverio Rueda, who allegedly told her to remain silent about what had occurred. She subsequently reported the matter to law enforcement. Philippe was arrested on March 16, 2019. Prosecutors filed the case 2 days later, on March 18. Philippe pleaded not guilty and demanded a jury trial on April 11, 2019. During the police investigation, Philippe gave a statement that has since been characterized in later proceedings as a confession, though he maintained afterward that the statement was false. The case went to trial in October of 2021. After a week-long trial, the jury deliberated for approximately 2 hours before returning a guilty verdict on the charge of sexual battery, a second-degree felony under Florida law, on October 29, 2021. Sentencing took place on February 17, 2022. Assistant State Attorney Khalil Quinan sought the maximum sentence of 15 years. Circuit Judge Carmen Cabarga instead imposed 94.5 months, equivalent to just under 8 years, which represented the statutory minimum sentence available for the offense. Philippe filed a direct appeal with Florida's 3rd District Court of Appeal. That appeal was affirmed on November 8, 2023, meaning the conviction and sentence became final at that point, with no further successful challenge on record. It should be noted that early reporting from one outlet incorrectly described the sentence as 15 years, handed down in January of 2022. The accurate and confirmed record, verified through the Miami Herald and the appellate court's own opinion, shows a 94.5-month sentence issued in February of 2022. This case illustrates the role internal church reporting structures can play and the complications that can arise when an initial disclosure is made to another member of clergy rather than to law enforcement directly, and how that sequence of events can become a documented part of the criminal case file. Sources for this case include reporting from the Miami Herald, WPLG Local 10, WSVN, Catholic News Agency, the National Catholic Register, documentation from bishopaccountability.org, a statement from the Archdiocese of Miami, and the written opinion of Florida's 3rd District Court of Appeal in case number 3D22-0500. Case 7. Jonathan Edward Elwing. A senior pastor in Manatee County was convicted on 12 felony counts and sentenced to 12 life terms within 24 hours of his trial beginning, after a cryptocurrency company alerted investigators to suspicious financial activity. This is the case of Jonathan Edward Elwing. Elwing served as senior pastor of Palm View First Baptist Church in Palmetto, Florida, a Southern Baptist Convention congregation. He was 45 years old at the time of trial and 43 at the time of his arrest. According to the Manatee County Sheriff's Office, a cryptocurrency company reported that Elwing had used digital currency to purchase illegal material through the dark web. That tip led investigators to obtain a search warrant for Elwing's home and his office at the church, executed on June 21, 2024. During the search, investigators seized a password-protected phone belonging to Elwing. Digital forensic examiners recovered material stored inside a hidden application on the device. That material was dated to April 26, 2024, and depicted the abuse of a 2-year-old child. Investigators also located hidden cameras in both Elwing's home and his church office during the course of the search. Elwing resigned from his position shortly before his arrest. He faced a jury trial that took place over 2 days, April 20th and 21st, 2026. The jury returned guilty verdicts on all 12 felony counts, which included capital sexual battery of a child under the age of 12, lewd and lascivious molestation, 5 counts related to the use of a child in a sexual performance, and 5 counts of possession of prohibited material. The jury deliberated for approximately 1 hour. Circuit Judge D. Ryan Felix sentenced Elwing immediately following the verdict on April 21, 2026, to 12 life sentences, one for each count. 3 of those 12 sentences were ordered to run consecutively, with the remainder running concurrently. Ellwing was also formally designated a sexual predator under Florida law. Under a Florida statute enacted in 2023, which expanded eligibility for the death penalty in cases of capital sexual battery involving a child, Ellwing was a potential candidate for that maximum penalty. The jury and court ultimately proceeded with the sentence of 12 consecutive and concurrent life terms rather than capital punishment. This case represents the most recent and most digitally driven investigation in this compilation. The identification, search, and conviction all stemmed from a private financial technology company's fraud and abuse detection systems flagging a cryptocurrency transaction, which then led directly to physical evidence recovered from a personal device. It reflects a growing pattern in which financial technology providers serve as an early source of tips in cases involving digital exploitation material. Sources for this case include the Bradenton Herald, WFLA, Baptist Press, the Roy's Report, Ministry Watch, the Manatee County Sheriff's Office, and a public release from the State Attorney's Office of Florida's 12th Judicial Circuit. Case 8. Deborah True. A parish administrator, employed for years at a Catholic church in Indian River County, turned herself into county jail in September of 2022, 2 years after the priest she worked alongside had died, without ever facing charges. This is the case of Deborah True. True was 72 years old at sentencing and served as the parish administrator and bookkeeper, a lay employee, not an ordained member of clergy, at Holy Cross Catholic Church in Vero Beach, part of the Diocese of Palm Beach. According to prosecutors, the theft occurred between 2012 and 2020 and totaled more than $700,000, taken from parishioner donations. Prosecutors additionally alleged a broader scheme, totaling approximately $1.5 million, that they said involved True and the parish's priest, Father Richard Murphy, spanning 2015 through 2020. Father Murphy died in March of 2020. Because he died before any charges were filed against him, he was never tried, and the allegations connecting him to the scheme remain unproven in a court of law. They are prosecutorial allegations only, not findings of a court. After Murphy's death and True's subsequent retirement, the incoming pastor at Holy Cross discovered a bank account registered under the name Holy Cross Catholic Church that had been concealed from the Diocese of Palm Beach. That discovery prompted a 9-month investigation carried out by the Vero Beach Police Department. True turned herself in to the Indian River County Jail in September of 2022. She pleaded no contest to a charge of first-degree felony grand theft on May 1, 2025. Judge Robert Meadows sentenced her on July 18, 2025 to 10 years in prison, followed by 20 years of probation, along with an order to pay $697,138.98 in restitution. As part of her sentence, she was also barred from any contact with the parish. This case is distinct from others in this compilation because the convicted defendant was not ordained clergy, but a lay administrator operating within a church's financial structure. It is included here as a documented example of church leadership financial crime, and because prosecutors' allegations directly implicated an ordained priest, even though that priest's death foreclosed any possibility of a criminal trial or verdict regarding his role. The discovery process in this case, an incoming pastor identifying a concealed bank account after a change in parish leadership, reflects how internal financial oversight, or the lack of it, at the parish level can allow long-running schemes to continue undetected for years. Sources for this case include reporting from The Pillar, Vero Beach 32, 963, Vero News, Catholic News Agency, Catholic World Report, and statements from the Diocese of Palm Beach. Case 9. Ellie Floridin. A Miami pastor was sentenced in federal court to 48 months in prison after admitting he sought more than $1 million in pandemic relief funds for companies that did not exist. This is the case of Ellie Floridin. Floridin served as the lead pastor of New Bethel Baptist Church in Miami, a position he had held since November of 2000, according to Southern Baptist Convention records. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Floridin applied for Paycheck Protection Program loans, federal funds intended to help small businesses retain employees during the public health emergency, on behalf of companies that federal investigators determined did not actually exist. According to the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida, Floridin created a fraudulent employment agency that claimed approximately $960,000 in annual wages paid to employees who did not exist. The case was investigated by the COVID-19 Fraud Enforcement Task Force alongside the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida. Floridin pleaded guilty to federal wire fraud charges. According to the Department of Justice's public release, Floridin admitted that he had fraudulently applied for more than $1 million in relief funds and that he ultimately received more than half of that amount. Following his guilty plea, investigators identified an additional, earlier fraudulent loan Floridin had obtained, totaling approximately $336,000, which had not been part of the original charges but factored into the overall financial picture presented at sentencing. Floridin was sentenced to 48 months, or 4 years, in federal prison and ordered to pay $535,996 in restitution. The case was announced under United States Attorney Mackenzie Lapointe. This case is included in this compilation as a documented example of a Florida pastor prosecuted for financial crime connected to federal emergency relief programs, rather than for abuse-related offenses. It reflects how the same institutional trust that allows a pastor to manage a congregation's finances and represent a religious organization can, in some documented cases, be leveraged toward fraudulent applications for government assistance programs. Sources for this case include a press release from the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida, along with reporting from Baptist Press, WSVN, Church Leaders, and Ministry Watch. Case 10. Terrence Booker. A church youth director in Tallahassee was convicted in July of 2026 on charges involving one victim, while 4 additional cases connected to other alleged victims remain pending trial. This is the case of Terrence Booker. Because portions of this case have not yet gone to trial, those additional allegations are described here as allegations only and should not be understood as established findings of a court. Booker, age 40 to 41 at the time of these proceedings, served as a youth director at Life Changers Church of God in Christ in Tallahassee. He was also employed separately with an after-school program operated at W.T. Moore Elementary School. According to the Leon County Sheriff's Office, an investigation into Booker was first opened by the Florida Department of Children and Families in 2020, involving 3 juvenile accusers. That initial investigation was suspended at the time due to insufficient evidence to proceed with charges. A new allegation surfaced on July 17, 2025, which prompted the Leon County Sheriff's Office to reopen its earlier file. Booker turned himself in and was arrested on August 28, 2025. Additional charges were filed on September 23, 2025. Booker pleaded not guilty on October 14, 2025. According to investigators, the victim in the tried case came forward specifically after learning of Booker's 2025 arrest, prompting them to report separate, earlier alleged conduct said to have occurred between 2010 and 2015. Booker's first trial took place over 2 days, July 23 and 24, 2026. The jury convicted him of lewd and lascivious conduct and sexual battery on a child under the age of 16, involving one identified victim. The jury deliberated for approximately 45 minutes before returning its verdict. Under Florida law, Booker faces a maximum possible sentence of life in prison on these charges. As of this reporting, no sentencing date has been set. The presiding judge granted a defense motion to sever the remaining charges from this first trial. As a result, allegations connected to at least 4 additional identified individuals will be tried separately, in proceedings that have not yet concluded. Those remaining cases must be understood as pending and unproven. No verdict has been reached regarding them, and Booker is presumed not guilty on those specific charges, unless and until a jury or court determines otherwise. This case is included in this compilation, specifically because it demonstrates how the Florida court system separates multiple sets of allegations against a single defendant into distinct trials, and how a conviction on one set of charges does not extend to unresolved allegations still awaiting their own legal process. Viewers should understand that Booker's overall legal status, as of this reporting, includes 1 finalized conviction and 4 pending, unresolved cases. Sources for this case include reporting from the Tallahassee Democrat, WCTV, WTXL ABC 27, and public statements from the Leon County Sheriff's Office. 10 Florida cases, 10 different outcomes, from federal sentencing to a Florida jury's 45-minute deliberation. If you want the next set of case files, subscribe to Hidden Case Diaries. Drop a comment with the case that stood out most, and hit like so more of these documented cases reach you. We'll see you in the next file.